Hello and welcome to Touchline from Casper, and Mark Cameron. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Cas. Nice being back in studio. And tonight we have a special guest, and we are so fortunate to welcome, in my opinion, the best sevens coach that South Africa has ever produced, and obviously with a team that has done so well, Neil Powell. Welcome, Neil. Welcome to Touchline.
Welcome, Neil.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Casper. Thanks for having me on your show. And looking forward to our conversation over the next 30 minutes or so.
Thank you. Just before we start, I just want to say a very happy Valentine's Day to all our listeners and our viewers. And earlier today, we ran a little competition where our viewers and our listeners could guess who our guest on the show is tonight. And a big shout out to Neil Powell. Neil, over to you.
Yes, I just want to congratulate Nanette Roux for winning the WhatsApp competition, for obviously guessing correct who's going to be on the show tonight. And then also to say happy Valentine's Day to her and her husband, Bayes. I hope you had a fantastic Valentine's Day, and I hope you guys spoiled each other today. So congratulations and happy Valentine's Day.
Neil, thanks for that. I'd just like to know how she got it right to guess that it was you standing there. So I tried to send it to my wife and nothing happened. So maybe we must talk off air. But thank you for that. Much appreciated.
Yeah, Neil, thank you very much for that. Neil, tell us a little bit about Neil Powell, where it all started, how it began, when it began. How did you get into the sevens and the coaching?
Yes, I think my sevens career started way back in 2001. It was, actually before that, 2000. I think I got invited to a sevens trial. I can remember it clearly, up in Joburg, where Norman Mbiku and Ian McIntosh was the coaches of the Springbok Sevens team. And I think Ian McIntosh has done an amazing job to put Springbok Sevens on the map, because way back then in the 2000s or late 99s, 2000s, sevens was still very much an amateur system where they will get guys in from the 15s, let them train together for a week, and then they will go into the World Series. And I think Ian Mack went to SA Rugby and said, guys, if we put a Springbok jersey on their backs, they need to be Springboks. They can't just come in and then come 8th and 10th on a World Series. We need to really seriously make them contenders and make it a much more professional environment so that they can be a lot more successful in the World Series. So got invited to the trials. And then when the team was selected, I wasn't in the team that went to actually London. So we always did two tournaments. So it was London and Cardiff in Wales. Didn't miss out on the London tournament. But then somebody got injured in the London tournament. I think it was Andries Fourie. And then I got pulled into the squad for Cardiff. And that was my very first tournament in the sevens jersey. Played for, then I was out of the system again. Chester became the coach of the Springbok Sevens team. So when I made my debut in Cardiff, it was June, and then that December it was the Dubai tournament, and then it was actually held in Durban, the World Series. So 2 guys again got injured, or 3 guys got injured in Dubai, and then Ian McIntosh said to Chester, but he needs to get myself, Brent Russell, and then there was another guy from the Bulls that played actually hooker in 15s. He needed to get those 3 guys in for the injured players that got injured in Dubai. So, and then myself and Brent Russell made it to a team. We played in Durban, and then I stayed in the sevens team. Then with this about 2001, 2002, the beginning of 2002. The Sharks, Craig Davidson actually got injured and they needed a scrum half. So the Sharks lent me from the Free State because I was still signed at the Free State as a 15th player. Then the Sharks signed me. I was there for 2 months, and then I fractured my leg in a warm-up game against Harlequins in London. So then I stayed for 15s from the beginning of 2002 till the end of 2007. Had a few injuries, played a little bit for the Cats, but not a lot. And then after 2007, I was then signed with the Bulls. Didn't really get a contract with the Bulls, and then Paul True came and said, "Listen, I want you to come back to sevens. So then basically my sevens career almost continued from 2002. Became the captain of that team 2007. Again, I had a few injuries that kept me out of the team. And then I basically retired from playing sevens in June 2012. But in January 2012, or actually earlier than that, in January 2011, we actually took a proposal to SA Rugby and saying that you can't let development happen at national level. We need to have a sevens academy. So myself, Maurice Kuman, and then Konrad de Villiers, that was at that time our contact skills coach, drew up a proposal. We took it then to Johan Prinsloo, that was still the CEO of SA Rugby, and it was in that transition phase where Yuri Rood took over from Johan Prinsloo. And they said, yes, it's a great idea. Let's start at Seven Academy. So we opened the doors of the Sevens Academy in 2012, January. So I was actually still a player then. Every tournament that I didn't make, I went to the academy and coached for those 2 weeks when the team was overseas and played in tournaments. And interestingly enough, our first intake for the academy in 2012 was Cheslin Colby, Justin Geduld, Kwagga Smith, Werner Kok, Siabelo Sonatla joined us later that year. And then there was another 3 players that didn't make it that was part of that academy. So a very successful start to our Sevens Academy with myself as a coach, and then Maurice Kuman as the manager, and also the coach of the system, because when the Sevens team was in camp and I was part of it, then Maurice would coach the team, and when they have left and I didn't make the side, then I will come in and I will do the coaching for the academy. And then when I retired in June 2012, then I was full into the academy as the head coach of the academy system, and Maurice then the manager of the academy system. And then things changed quite quickly, to be honest. I actually started to look for other opportunities outside of South Africa, and in sevens I applied for the Kenya sevens job, and then things changed very quickly. And then in the end of October 2013, they appointed me as the head coach of the Springbok sevens team, and I'm still part of it, which is obviously a massive honor and a privilege. And it's been 8 years now, 8 and a little bit years. And when I finish in October this year, it will be 9 years that I was involved with the sevens. Yeah, and that's basically how I got into not just playing sevens, but also coaching sevens and starting a sevens academy that I felt contributed massively to the fact that we can be so successful over a long period. So that consistency basically in our performance.
So Neil, it's a massive history that you've just brought up there, with obviously a lot of experience from playing 15s and then going to sevens and then starting the academy, and well done with the academy. Yes. You know, when we follow the series all over the world, the commentators often go back to say our academy specifically as a production for rugby players coming through the system, and well done to you and Maurice Kuman for obviously starting that up. What I want to ask you, and I ask this to a lot of the 15 coaches that we interview on our show, is how difficult was it for you as a player to basically directly after that, or as you were saying, you were still busy playing and coaching and that at the same time. How difficult was that transition? Because obviously you mates with the guys, and then as a coach, you are on a obviously different authority level, and you need to, and they actually need to listen to you. So how difficult was that transition for you?
Yeah, I think it was a tricky one, and the fact that a lot of the guys that I now needed to coach, I played with on the World Series. Even a guy like Frankie Horn was my roommate for a full year on the World Series. So you definitely become friends and mates, and it's then a difficult thing to make them understand, but you're not really their friend anymore, you're now their coach. But for me, again, it was all about respect. Yeah. I think I said to them that you can call me anything. You can call me on my name, or you can call me coach, or you can even call me up. I said, but I don't think you can really call somebody up with respect. But as long as there's respect, and I think it's always been a big thing for me is respect. So even in our values still today, respect is definitely up there with the top values in our system. And I think what made it easier was the senior group, was the Frankie Horns and the Carl Browns that got the guys together and said, listen, this guy is not your friend anymore. You will call him coach, and I'm not big on titles. I don't really care about titles, but you will call him coach, and you will respect him as your coach. And I think, again, it's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to really show it in your actions and align and fall in under this coach and get yourself aligned. And I think what also helped that everybody buy into where we were going, and how we want to approach the future. When I started, was we were very lucky to be successful very early in my coaching career. So, well, not very lucky. I'll call it blessings. It was a big blessing that we were very successful in my coaching career. So, my first tournament in Gold Coast, we came fourth. Then the second tournament in Dubai, we lost to Fiji in the final, and then we won the tournament in PE. So, and I think as soon as we had that success, everybody almost aligned behind the system and behind me as a coach and said, right, this guy almost proved himself now that he's capable of coaching this team and taking this team somewhere. So, and you will always have those guys. You will always have the guys that will immediately buy into the whole idea of this is now the new coach, and then you will have the guys that will almost stand back a little bit and say, listen, let's see first if we can do this job before we align ourselves behind you.
That's what is nice to hear coming out of Neil's mouth is we were fortunate 2 or 3 weeks ago, a month ago maybe, I can't remember, when you guys were in Spain, we had the privilege to speak to Dewald Iman.
Yeah.
And he himself spoke about the principles, respecting each other, respecting the game, respecting coaching staff, the players, and whether he made the side or not, and he spoke on behalf of all the players, it doesn't matter. They know they're part of the system. They know where they fit in. And because part of what we asked is obviously with the Sevens set up, most of the guys are based in Cape Town, and it's like a family, unlike anywhere else. And he said it's massive. They are like friends, but they're like family. If the one hurts, they all hurt.
Something that he emphasized was that it's all about the team. It's got nothing to do with any individual. It's got nothing to do with what's happening in the system. It's all about the team. It's the team performance. It's what's best for the team at that stage. And that made an impact on me.
Yeah, so and then just on the Sevens side, if you can maybe just elaborate a little bit and tell the viewers. Obviously, when you took over from Paul True, am I right? If I remember correctly, it's such a long time ago. So Paul also obviously went through a phase where the Blitzbokke were very successful at a stage in that. But where you have taken them to now, I don't think it's ever been seen in South African rugby. Obviously, we are only the second team to the All Blacks Sevens that have won so many consecutive games. Yes. I think it's 34, if I'm not mistaken.
Now.
35 now. What is it that Neil Powell does for the players to hold that so tight to say this is where we want to be? Because obviously we've all been privileged enough to be part of the 15s as well, but the Sevens, even in 15s rugby, when you talk, everyone says we want to be like the Blitzboks, and it's totally different. But I think the mechanics and the basics are the same. But you've got something right that many people around the world also want to tap into to say that's where we want to go.
And I think it comes down to what Dewald said. It's all about the system, and we'll always say. I mean, in 20 years from now, nobody will even remember Neil Powell or Cecil Africa or Frankie Horn or all the big names in Sevens, but Springbok Sevens will still be there. So everything we do is about a system, and there's nobody more important than anybody else. I mean, whether you're the coach or the captain or the doctor or just one of the youngsters in the team, there's daily, almost, I want to say, activities or daily duties that needs to be fulfilled. And because you have a title, it doesn't exclude you from those daily duties. And I think that's what made this system so special. It's everything. It's about the system. I think it's a system where the guys really set high standards to themselves. And again, it's a combined effort. I think everybody, only see myself standing in front and coaching the team. And yes, there's obviously a lot of things where the buck stops with me. But there's a lot of people that contributes to making this team successful. Nobody sees the doctor and the guys doing the rehab and the academy coaches and what they do to actually make the system as successful as it's been. And I think one of the things that we have addressed and I've addressed when we came into the system, and it almost felt like a South African culture, not just in rugby, but you get it in cricket and you get it in soccer sometimes as well, or most of the times, where we work really hard and we get to the point where we're successful, and then the very next tournament or the very next game we don't even make the quarterfinal, we don't even pitch up on the field, and we don't really play well. And it almost feels like we work hard, we get ourselves to a point where we're successful, and then we almost get ahead of ourselves. It's not an arrogance, but it's almost just a little bit chest out and stomach in, and we think a little bit more of ourselves than we should. And I think we had a look at New Zealand Sevens, and we saw that although in a 10 tournament series they will only win 3 tournaments, they constantly get themselves in a semi-final. So every single other tournament they got themselves in the semi-final, and that consistency was something that we strive for. And I think it's obviously a physical thing and a technical thing, but I think it's probably more a mental thing of where you were successful, and then you almost need to get yourself what we call back to zero before you start the next tournament. And it's again a psychological principle, a sports psychology principle that was taught to us, and we call it getting back to zero. So the principle is, if you win a tournament, then you sit on a +5, and then before you get to the next tournament, you need to get yourself back to zero. And to get yourself back to zero, you need to physically do something to mentally get you back to zero. So our sports psychologist explained to us that Rafael Nadal, after a Grand Slam win on a Sunday, he will have a gym session with his trainer on a Monday morning, 7 o'clock. But 6:30, he will go into the gym and have a really hard physical cardio session. So on the bike, on the treadmill, for 30 minutes, and that is his physical session to mentally get him back to zero. So for us, how it works practically is we will drop the guys in the gym on a Wednesday, and then we'll say, listen guys, you have your 30 minutes. We'll give them a framework of what they could do, especially the new guys. And for a guy like Werner Kok, that's a little bit more aggressive. If there's a punching bag, he'll put his gloves on, punch the punching bag, stretch, and he's done. Philip Snyman or Sissel Africa, that's a little bit more relaxed. We'll go treadmill, bike, stretch, done. Justin Gedul, that's very stretchy. But that's very chilled and very laid back. He's more of the Rasta type, and he listens to all this Rasta music. He will just sit on the floor, relax, stretch for 15 minutes, and that's his session. So again, it's individualized, but I think it's something that I think has contributed massively to our success over the last few years. But just to be able to get that consistency and almost get ourselves back to zero again before we go into the next tournament, whether we were successful and be on +5 or not successful on -3. So for both those occasions, you still need to get yourself to that zero before you start the next tournament.
No, definitely.
Neil, on that point now, the successes of the Sevens rugby now, Neil Powell's future after the Sevens now, end of the season now, it's all over the media now that Neil Powell is coming to the Sharks, which we are very glad for.
Not you, you're a Lion supporter. I'm happy because I'm a Shark supporter. Thanks, Neil, for that one.
Okay. I'm very glad that you're coming to the Sharks now. Since we're talking out of Toti, I'm very glad that you come to the Sharks. But talking about that now, you see how glad Mark is. He's even blushing. So tell us about that transition from Sevens now onto the 15 game, and how you see yourself slotting into the Sharks setup now as now the new director of rugby at the Sharks.
Yeah, well, firstly, I think it was obviously not an easy decision to make. If you were part of the Springbok 7 setup for, well, not just the 9 years as a coach, but the 7 years before that as a player, you don't just walk away from a system that you eat, breathe, and live every single day. I mean, it's obviously getting all the more emotional the closer I get to that date where you're gonna have to walk away, because it's an amazing system with amazing people, and it's something that I obviously will dearly miss when I leave. But yeah, I think the transition will be again a challenge as well. I think although it's both rugby, it's different systems. I think having more people to manage. And I think as a head coach and as a director of rugby, I think that's probably your biggest challenge, is just to manage the people inside the system, because everybody obviously wants to know that they're important. Everybody wants to know that they're not just a number, but that they are cared about. And that's how we build our Springbok 7 system. But again, it's so much easier because you only have 9 management and you'll have another 25 players. Now you sit with 20 management and another 50 and 50 players. So, and I think that's what I sometimes feel like with the sevens. You have a contact, whether it's just a conversation contact or a physical morning, how are you contact, but you'll have a contact with every single player every day. And it almost feels like, because there's so many people inside a 15 system, that you might even go without a day or two not seeing some of the players in the system. And I think those contacts for me as a head coach and obviously a director of rugby when I go to the Sharks is got to be important, because although the game of rugby is what we are employed to do, I think for me it's only the platform, and what we would like to do is to speak into young men's lives so that they walk away better people from that system, better values, because we believe in a Springbok 7 setup that they will be husbands, they will be fathers, they will be employees and employees. And we want to send them away from the system where they can be successful in any of those roles, no matter what the future look like for them. And I think it's something that we definitely would like to continue when I make that transition to the Sharks. It's yes, rugby is the platform and it's the game that was given to me, but again, it's more about the people.
Neil, we unfortunately running out of time. We can talk rugby and sevens and with you and all your knowledge for days. That's what we do, and a lot of times we get into trouble because we go over time, or I get into trouble. But there's 3 questions that I'd like to ask you quickly, if I may.
Sure. Please go ahead.
One is, you've been so successful as a sevens blitzball coach. One of the things that we haven't grasped in our hands yet is the World Cup sevens. Mm-hmm. We are fortunate that the World Cup will be in Cape Town this year, and that's just before you hand over the reins. Obviously, that's on your radar, and that's what you want, I'm assuming, if I was the coach, desperately as well, because that's how you want to walk away. How important would that be for you, obviously, to make or not make it?
Yeah, again, I think it's obviously something that you would like to get as your last tournament, but unfortunately life is not a fairy tale, so it's not always going to end like you do. But I think, again, it's going to come down to the effort that we put in, the guys' roles and responsibilities that they will implement, and even the effort that we put in as coaches. And I think we totally had our focus wrong the previous once-off tournaments that we had, the Commonwealth Games and the World Cup, that we didn't do well. Unfortunately, there was a lot of circumstances that almost prevented us from being successful at the Olympics, and COVID played a big role there. But yeah, I think if we get our focus on the right thing, and if we put the effort in, then hopefully we will get the results.
I'm sure you would. My second question would be, and that I listen to the commentators often, and obviously national TV puts one on the spot sometimes. Neil Powell doesn't smile often while the Blitzboks are playing. Are we going to see some more smiles while you're at the Sharks?
Yeah, listen, I think it's something that sometimes frustrates my wife as well, when she tells me to smile. And I am smiling at this moment. But,
yes, and I hope all the listeners and viewers are watching this.
Yeah, so I think it's almost like a safety that I build into my personality, where I don't get too emotional, because you get the flip side of it as well.
Correct.
Where you almost get too emotionally involved. And I think if you're too emotional and you're too excited next to the field, it rubs off, especially on the guys on the bench as well. And then they go onto that field with that overexcitement, and they don't get it right, and they don't make the good decisions on the field. So I think it's almost a safety mechanism that I built into my personality, where I don't get overly excited, but I also don't get overly sad. I just keep almost that flat line, just to make sure that I protect myself firstly, and then everybody around me.
No, look, I agree with you. I think that's a massive skill for any coach to learn. It doesn't matter what level you are at.
Attribute.
Just the last question out of the 3 that I want to ask you, and
it was 2
I'm throwing you under the bus now, because If you can explain to us firstly, and then obviously to the viewers, you were initially appointed to the Sharks as a defence coach. Am I right?
Yes.
All right. So you were here last week, I think it was, on a small. I see your face on a short spell of doing whatever. You must have come down here with a magic wand, because I think it is the quickest that I've ever seen anyone jump from that level of coaching to the director of rugby. How did that work? If you can elaborate.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll give you the political.
Yes, that's the one I want.
Yeah, okay, listen, I think it's a discussion that we had before my visit to the Sharks. So it's not something that happened in a week's time. So obviously,
I can imagine.
To get somebody from an assistant coach to being a director of rugby, to jump that high, if I can call it that, doesn't happen in a week's time. So, and again, I think it was a case of just feeling that the Sharks, we need to work a little bit on the culture of the team. And me being the assistant, it's going to be difficult to then under Sean try to work on that culture. So I think that was the main reason for the director of rugby appointment, is to then be able to immediately step in and work on the culture of the team and see if we can get a better culture. Not that it's a bad culture, but just to see if we can get more steps in the right direction and try to keep the group a little bit closer and see if we can get everybody to align and work in the same direction.
Like,
let me tell
Neil,
you, I'm
we know you've got
so,
another engagement. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah.
You've got another engagement that you need to go to. Neil, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a privilege talking to you and to hear these stories from your side. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Neil, and all the best for the Sharks. We know Sean very well. We've had him in studio before. I definitely believe that you will make a difference here. So good luck, and we'll definitely have you back in studio one of these days to only talk Sharks rugby.
100%. Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks, Casper. And I'm really looking forward to work with Sean. I think he's a great guy, a great coach. And I think there's a lot of potential in that Sharks group, not just from a coaching perspective, but the players as well. So, looking forward to a challenge. It's going to be different to what I'm used to with the Sevens, but really looking forward to it. But thank you for having me.
Thanks, Neil. All the best and good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Mark, now we can talk some URC.
Yo.
This was brilliant. This was absolutely brilliant having Neil with us.
If you listen to him and what the viewers see, as I asked him now, on the side of the field, and then this comes out of it, then you think, wow, and I can tell you now that's part of the reason why the players in the Blitzbox side do so well, because 100%. Other than trusting the system and that, I think they want to play for him.
No, they want to play for him. No, you can see that
as a Shark supporter, the proof is in the pudding, but I think as a Shark supporter, probably the right decision. I think he's going to bring a lot of that seven stuff into the union. Yes. And let's see where it takes us.
I'm sure that this decision was thought through properly and that they've made the right decision.
No, most definitely. And look, he's hungry for that. So, and he comes from a successful background, so he would want to make a success.
He would. And I'm sure he's going to. United Rugby Championships, games played over the weekend. Vodacome's Bulls 22, Celsea Sharks 29. Not a bad game to watch, but it could have been better.
Well, as a Lions supporter, I suppose it wasn't a bad game for you to watch. I think uncalled for maybe. There was a lot of niggle in the game, especially in the beginning. But I think hats off to the referee. I think he handled it quite well to say no more. The next one that starts it will get a card.
Yes.
And I think it was about it must have been about 15 minutes or 20 minutes or so, and that was it. I think the sad part here was the first red card.
Yes.
From Mornay Steyn, and that put the Bulls under tremendous pressure. Yes. I'm a Shark supporter, but I can tell you, I think, and the Bulls showed that the way they came back, and we've been battling of late in the last 20 minutes or so. If they had 15 men on the field, I think it could have been a different different scoreline.
Probably would have been a different scoreline.
But I mean, I think the Sharks played a lot better than in the past few weeks, and slowly but surely, I think something is happening. It's still sad to see that we're playing the way we are with all our box back.
Yes.
And that shouldn't be. I don't think it's a good showing for Springbok rugby that we've got so many talented Springboks there that play at the top level, and we're battling. And then obviously Hendricks has red card, and we're not here to criticize and anything like that, and it's our own opinion. But I do think that somewhere along the line, sanity needs to prevail.
Yes.
Part of the referee's decision was made that he led with his head. To go into a tackle, I mean, you don't tackle like this with your head falling back. You have to drive forward. Yes, there's mitigating circumstances and so forth, and maybe he fell into it, but it wasn't a high tackle at all. It's just the heads that collided. And maybe there's something there to have a look at. Personally, I know it's a head contact. Those are the rules. So they were spot on with regards to the rules. So one can't change that. But I think it sours the whole game and whatever. So, but whatever it is, well done to the Bulls for coming back. And firstly, obviously to Sean Everett and his charges, well done.
Yes.
5 points in the bag. Now we're going to go away. So now we're going to see how it goes.
Emirates Lions versus DHL Stormers. Lions 10, Stormers 32.
I feel for Cash van Rooyen and Ricardo Loubser and all those guys. It's a new coaching setup. We were fortunate enough to have Ricardo Loubser in studio before, and he spoke with passion about how they're turning the ship, and they did. I mean, they went overseas. They actually played decent rugby. At one stage, they were the only guys overseas that had won a game, and the Sharks and the Stormers hadn't won yet. Even Western Province, for that matter. But I don't, and it's like anything. Obviously, we're not privy enough to be part of that squad to see what is happening, and that one must understand that they have many new players, and it's a new system. I mean, the box that they have, they are all the older box, if I can call it. But there's no Elton Yankees anymore that led that back and as a captain and that. And I think they're rebuilding. The problem herein lies with everything is when you keep losing, I think then you start losing focus and you start not believing anymore. Yes. So I think, as Neil was saying earlier, there's a lot of psychological stuff happening.
Yes.
And obviously they would have those guys to work with the players. But maybe you start, as a player now, you start questioning certain things within the setup and that, and don't take it, you can't take anything away from the Stormers, though. The Stormers, I don't think they've hit their straps yet. I think they are playing better and better week in and week out.
But they're also missing some key players?
No, fair enough. And that's why our half-time score was 10-3.
Yes.
So if you look at the way they've been going, you will see that, the end result was 32-10.
Yes.
And what worked for them is, and Dobson tried this now, is to have Warwick Galant and Willemse in the same starting lineup. And I think that worked because they love to attack. But good luck to them, because they also went through a phase where things weren't going according to plan, and everyone was saying, well, must Dobson go, and the players, and they have players like Ivan Roos injured that must still come back. But as per normal, we'll see when our teams go on tour now. I think that is where the challenge is going to come, and see if we can step up to it. I mean, the Bulls are the fortunate ones. When they went overseas last year to play in the final, they got unstuck. Yes. They will know when they go back, they're not playing their best rugby. When they did go overseas, they were Currie Cup champions and everything, and they believed in themselves, and they got unstuck. So I think when they go, it will be a different kettle of fish. But the rest of us have been there already, so they know what to expect, and hopefully we'll turn the tables, and more so, the Emirates Lions will really start playing the way they can play.
Talking about the Northern Hemisphere, Six Nations, Italy, England. We spoke about that game a little bit last week as well. Italy 0, England 33. Your views on that?
Well, if you look at the Italy game, as I said last week, Italy played France last week.
Yes.
And I did mention that Italy is a vastly improved side to previous years. And they proved it yet again this time. I mean, the scoreline was very close. If you look at the end, obviously England ran away with it, if I can put it. But in the past, you wouldn't have seen 33-0. It would have been higher scores in the 40s and the 50s and so forth. So ultimately, I think Italy they're still battling, make no mistake, but I think they're on the right path. I mean, they're physical, they run with the ball nicely, they contest well. England, I mustn't say we're fortunate, because I think they did put Italy under pressure, but they didn't execute properly. Having said that, France didn't put them away last week either.
No, they didn't.
And the French are currently playing phenomenal rugby. So
very good side.
I just think from an England side, they're happy that they bounced back.
Yes.
And they got their 5 points because that's what they wanted, and they put themselves back on the map.
100%. Talking about France, Ireland. France 30, Ireland 24. You mentioned something last week that this was the game to watch.
Yeah.
And the side that wins this game can probably go through.
I still believe that. We did say last week as well that the French-Irish game is going to be the game to watch of the week.
Yes.
And the team winning that will, in all probability, go through and stake a claim to win. France is the only team left now that can win the Grand Slam, so they've got all to play for.
Yes.
Having said that, it was a close game. It was a 50-50, and then it was tit for tat, and then the one scored and the other one came back. Some very exciting rugby. But what is phenomenal is when you play the French in France, their crowd is absolutely phenomenal. I listened to a lot of the commentary and a lot of the box that had played overseas in France before. Swayze, the brain himself, was saying over the weekend that when he was part of the Springbok coaching setup and they went to France, you don't really find that anywhere else in the world, because they were vocal and they were cheering. But France is obviously on the up, and as we spoke previously on a few of our shows, we said that they are preparing for the World Cup in France next year. If you look at the kicking, and we've been fortunate enough to have Floxel here in studio before, he spoke about how specific they are and specific things that they do with regards to kicking and the things that he does to get the guys to strike the ball better and so on and so forth. And you can even see their kicking has improved. You know, so all round, Fabian Galtier is definitely doing something right. I think he's got the right people in support, and I think if I can put it that way, the bigger countries like the South Africans and the New Zealand or whatever, when they go to France next year, watch the home team.
Watch the home team. Then moving on to Wales, Scotland. Wales 20, Scotland 17. I really had my money on Scotland for this one.
You did say so?
I did say so. I really had it. But I think Wales is just one of those teams that will never lose 2 weekends in a row.
Yeah, look, there was quite a bit at stake. Obviously, they had to win, and as I said previously, they are the current Six Nations champions.
Yes, they are.
One thing that stood out there was Dan Biggar. He played in his 100th game, and what a game he played.
Yeah.
You know, and congratulations to Dan Biggar, obviously, for that.
Yes.
You know, I think it was also a scrappy affair. It wasn't the best game to watch. I think one expected more from Scotland.
Yes.
Compared to previous week where they actually played well. But having said that, Wales obviously took them out of their comfort zone, and they couldn't let them play the way they wanted to. I was disappointed that Scotland lost, to be honest, because Wales, you know, yes, they're the Six Nations champions, but they haven't been playing the way we know they can play. And, you know, they must now still play some of the big guns. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen.
Ireland made them look average the previous week, and they actually came back and did well against Scotland.
No, definitely, and you need to give them credit, because as we said, the Scots would have been fired up because they've just beaten England.
Are they coming off a win?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Very good win.
Having said that, yet again, other than Italy, all the home nations won.
Yes.
You know, so home ground advantage obviously played quite a significant part in the results this week. And, you know, if you look at Wales, Scotland specifically, you will see that it was a close game. And there even the France-Ireland game was a close game. You know, France ran away with it in the beginning. Yes. And then Ireland came back. But it's the crowd that kept them going. You know, I would have loved to see what this would have been, or the scores would have been, if there was still COVID and no people in the stadium. Like in South Africa, I mean, we only allow 2,000. Their stadiums are packed. So I think home ground definitely makes a difference.
Then, just the last question quickly, Mark. Our team's going overseas now in the United Rugby Championships. Your prediction, are we going to get unstuck like we done the last time?
Look, I think it is going to be difficult. I think it's going to be different. Firstly, we now need to adapt to the weather conditions again. I mean, we used to hear the dry weather and playing in the Highveld. So now we're going there, it's winter. We've seen lots of rain and snow at some places. So I think it will be difficult, but now's the time to make it happen. Yeah. I think we're only going to go away for one game and then we come back again for 2 or 3 playing at home. So that would help us, I suppose. But it's a one game that they need to step up to the plate and they need to make sure that they make it happen. Good luck to them.
Good luck to them. Mark, thank you very much. Thank you for our viewers and listeners for tuning in to Touchline. Mark, thank you very much for your input. And once again, thank you to Neil Powell for coming into the studio and chatting to us. It was genuinely a privilege.
Yeah, it's always nice to have people, especially a guy like Neil Powell and the way he speaks, and I think people can relate to him. And just to you as well, thanks for always chatting some good rugby and for us to have the opportunity to be on Touchline. It's an absolute phenomenal privilege as well. So from myself, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. From Casper Els and Mark Cameron, thank you for tuning in to Touchline and have a great rugby week.